Some of you may remember that a few months ago I showed you something that I was keeping for a more appropriate moment somewhere in the future to use as a new project. And my new project is inside this box. So let me just show you what the new project would be. Now it might be a short-lived project or maybe a longer project. It will all depend on the state of what's inside this box. It was sent to me over from the States, and I think some of you may already guess what it is. And I think this is the kind of stuff that Bob of bandersentv channel, one of those guys who are specialists in repairing old TV sets, would really love to work on and all that. Just let me get hold of it, because it's heavier, much heavier than you would think it is. There we go. Although this is touted, I should say, as a portable TV, and in fact as so-called the very first portable TV ever made, well, I'm not sure, but it looks peachy. Well, it looks dirty most of all, and it looks slightly damaged too. I think this set must have had a really tough life, and maybe even a kid tried to open it at one stage or something like that, because quite a bit of the metal trimming is damaged and all that. But I think by now most of you know what it is. It is in fact a Philco H2010 Safari portable black and white TV. Now, as you can see, and as I said before, this set has had a pretty rough life. Well, the front is reasonable, but take a look at the back and the sides. And, well, my reaction would be, oh dear. Compared to the state of other sets I've had, well, like I said, this one has had a pretty rough time. It might have worked at a certain stage. In fact, it probably worked at a certain stage, but I'll be damned if I know if it's still functional or not. So it's pretty dusty inside, but I don't see any bodies of mice or cockroaches or any other critters. And well, I can see this radio has been opened by somebody at a certain stage, and I don't know why they opened it or even how they opened it, but I suspect somebody just cut the stitching of the backing to the sides to open it up, which is really lousy because I'm really not a very good stitcher, and if I have to stitch those back myself, oh dear, that might present a problem. So excuse me, that might prove to be quite a challenge. Also, the TV set wasn't sold with a schematic, and the antenna of the TV set is missing, as you can see from the top. Yeah, so this is the opening where normally the antenna would have sat, and well, I hope it wasn't just ripped out, but if it was, well then yeah, that might prove a challenging problem to solve. And well, at a certain stage there was sticky tape on it, and there's also the odd paint spatter, which Bob will certainly recognize. You see those white little paint spots. He would say that's typical for any TV set he has had to work on. There is no battery inside, obviously, so at one stage or another somebody must have removed the batteries. Here is the battery connector, by the way, and you can see one of the leads has broken off, and it's, well, it's quite corroded, so that will also need a little bit of looking to. I suspect this is the other battery lead, so that will need some repairing. As far as I can see on the circuit boards, fortunately nobody tried to do any sort of repair to it or whatever. So, like I say, I suspect some teenager or other, or maybe an enthusiastic but not very knowledgeable hobbyist must have sort of ripped off the back to get to the antenna and rip it off for whatever reason. So what Bob told me, Bob of the B. Anderson channel told me, was that before I did any sort of real repair to the TV set, would be to check out the picture tube, obviously, because if the picture tube doesn't work, well, would be broken or anything, then Bob told me that it would probably be a waste of effort and time and probably resources to fix it. Since the picture tube inside the Philco H2010 or the Philco Safari is a rather rare picture tube. It's a 2EP4, and you can see it sitting right in the bowels of the machine. I can point to it. So here it is. This is the deflection coil at which I'm pointing, and the butt end of the tube is right here. Now, as far as I can tell, the tube itself doesn't look like it's been messed with, but it looks a little bit crooked. I hope the tube isn't broken, then I'm in trouble. But as far as I can tell, well, it might not be broken. Or it might just be mounted at an angle or something like that. But okay, so the point is I need to check the picture tube out, whether it works or not, because if it's broken, then, well, that will be the end of the project, at least temporarily. So what I want to say for the moment is, if any of you guys have the original or unoriginal AC cord and or the antenna which was mounted inside of this TV set, then just tell me, and we might be able to work out a deal, either for the cord or the antenna. And the same goes with the picture tube. If this picture tube turns out to be broken for whatever reason, then if somebody, one of you, might have a 2EP4 lying around, then I would be glad to hear from you and we might be able to work out a deal. Okay, so I'm going to put down the camera for a moment and I'm going to try to unmount the chassis from its outer cover. But this is the Safari's top. As you can see, I unmounted it too. And this is a special mirroring glass which is used to mirror or to reflect the screen surface onto a concave mirror which is built at the top of the TV. Let me show you. The TV is a bit heavy, so give me a moment to show you. Okay, so one thing I can already say or tell while I unmounted the casing is that probably somewhere in the past somebody tried, well, to unmount the picture tube, or, well, whatever, tried to do something with it and rather forcibly tried to move it away from the screen which is cut out here. So the glass reflector which you see here, which I hold in front, really does nothing but reflect the picture which is on the screen surface onto this concave mirror, which enlarges the image and then reflects it back out through the mirror. Now the mirror is semi-transparent, which means that the enlarged picture would come out of the mirror's surface. Some very poor attempt was made to clean the mirror and the concave mirror, but well, whomever did it really botched the job, because it's really bad, badly forced and damaged, and there's a lot of damage really. And as you can see, they even ripped the trimming off, thinking that if they did that, well, that's an educated guess, of course, that they would more easily, or it would be more easily unmounted from the chassis itself, which of course is not the way to do it. But okay, so that's what they did. Also, if you look at the mount where the antenna was originally situated, you can see part of the mount broke off. So whomever tried to unmount the antenna really did a very poor job of it. Okay, so that's the front and the top of the TV set. Oh, and by the way, while they tried to unmount the radio, they probably poked their finger into the speaker. So the speaker, aside from the rip, looks reasonable, so I think it's salvageable. Okay, so now for the back of the TV set. Oh yeah, and by the way, you can see the coil of the TV there, and you can see that the tube, or rather the alignment or the deflection coil of the tube, could be slid up and down with these 3 screws here. At least that's my guess for now. Until I can unmount it, we won't know. Okay, so the way to unmount the leather casing, or the leather cover of the chassis, which by the way is in very bad shape, as you can see here. It's really ripped up and badly molded. I think whomever unmounted it was either in a big hurry to try to open it up, or well, was really extremely brutal with it, as you can see by the traces on the back of the TV cover and all that. They did a really poor job of it. Also, I seem to be missing a small metal stand on which the radio stood. If I look at the old pictures, old publicity pictures of the TV set, I can see it had a metal stand at the bottom of this cover, and it was mounted by 4 screws through these 4 studs you can see in the corners. But they probably unmounted the stand and threw it away or whatever. So really, whomever it was who tried to disassemble this TV set was really very brutal and not very patient. Okay, so now for the back of the TV set. Here you go. I have to handle it a little bit carefully because I don't know if the tube is damaged or not, so I really have to be careful. Okay, so this is one side of the TV set. You can see here, caution to determine presence of high voltage, discharge anode lead to high voltage cage only. Okay, and you see a small brand Philco here, printed in USA. And the circuit board looks, actually, considering the way they mold the whole thing, looks pretty unscathed. So that at least is a good sign. Okay, so now I will try to swivel it so you can see the back. Okay, so you remember that this bracket was kind of screwed on like this, while actually it needed to be slotted in here and then screwed on. But okay, so I unscrewed it and I released it, and if I read the service manual, there should have been something like a bracket, a battery bracket, and I'm not sure, but maybe this is the battery bracket. But if it is, then I think the screw to which the battery was attached is missing. And actually the battery is missing, so there's no way of telling. But I think the battery was originally screwed fast to this bracket. So I had to undo this. So the unmounting instructions say that you have to unmount the 4 screws at the bottom, which actually I didn't have to do because the foot was missing. So probably somebody did it before me at some time in the past. And then what you need to do is release some release screws at the top, in the front, and at the back there are also 2 screws, as you can see, one here, one there. And then you can lift the cover up, but you should lift it really carefully because the antenna lead is connected to this stud here in the corner. Let me see if I can point it. So right here there's a stud to which the antenna lead is connected, and the antenna lead is this, which is really an eyelet with a screw in it, as you can see. I used a little bit of tape to glue them together so that I wouldn't lose it, but actually it's an eyelet with a screw, and that was connected or screwed tight to this stud. Also, which was screwed to the stud, was a piece of copper lining, which you see here in my parts bag. I don't know exactly what the function of this copper strip is or was, but I guess I will have to find out. Oh, and by the way, these are the knobs and all that. So the instructions in the right order are that you should pull off the knobs from the sides, because there's one front knob, of course, but that one you can leave on. So you have to pull off the knobs from the side. You have to undo 4 screws at the bottom. Then you can pull down, well, you completely turn over the TV on its head carefully, and you can pull up the leather covering off from the chassis. Then you put the TV right side up again, and then you undo the 3 screws which screw the top of the TV to the rest of the chassis. Taking care, of course, not to rip off the wire to which the antenna is connected. Now, I suspect you can disconnect the antenna wire from the chassis. As you can see here, you can see a sort of a kinch type connector. I'll point to it so you can see. This one here is a kinch type of connector. I suspect you can disconnect it first here before you pull off the top of the casing. However, I think due to corrosion and oxidation, it was fused tightly to the chassis, and I didn't want to rip it out or rip anything out trying to pull it out, so I just left it where it was, and instead I unscrewed it gently from the top of the casing. Okay, so now I also understand why I had the impression that the picture tube was not really in its correct position. Somebody at some time in the past must have pushed really hard on the top of the tube with his fingers, pushed it down and tried to swivel it to the back. That's why the tube gives the impression of being pointed in the wrong direction. So I will have quite a bit of work to get that right, but I think by unscrewing the top of the reflector head or the reflector dome, by unscrewing these 2 screws at the back and there are a couple at the front. By gently removing the dome top, excuse me, I think I can remedy that problem, and I really hope the front of the picture tube isn't damaged. Okay, so now let me show you the last side, the other side of the TV. And this PCB, or this surface mount board, also seems unscathed, fortunately. So they didn't mess that up either. So let's say it's a mixed blessing. Let's say they probably tried, for whatever reason, to undo the picture tube very brutally and very badly, but they didn't succeed, and perhaps, if I'm lucky, that might turn out to be a blessing in disguise. So okay, the last thing I'm going to do now is to undo or unmount the top of the dome. You know, so as you can see, I have to unmount this screw probably, and then these two screws hold on the special mirror, so I don't think I need to unscrew this for now, but I have to unscrew this and then those two screws at the back. And here is the top of the Safari TV, and you can see the picture tube sitting right inside the bowels of the TV set, and if you look to the right, you can just see the speaker sticking out on the right, and if I look on the left, the only thing I can see from here is probably the channel selector with its knob. Yeah, it's the channel selector. So the tube is out of alignment, at least in respect to the reflector which I unmounted, which you see lying here. If you take a careful look at the top, or rather the bottom of the reflector housing, then you can see that normally it should be sitting on top of the tube like this, and the tube itself should be sitting in between these brackets here. So you see that it should fit between those three brackets here, so flush with this surface, which it wasn't. So I think the picture tube was tampered with at a certain stage, but more, I think somebody probably pushed down onto the tube with his fingers like this, really downward. And in fact, if I look carefully, I can see finger traces here. So if I were a detective, I could probably work out whose finger traces I see here. So anyway, somebody tried very clumsily to service this TV and really did a very bad job of it. I'm a little bit disappointed actually at the general state of the TV, but okay, that's all part of the fun, of course, of trying to get an old appliance like this to work once again. And in fact, if you look closely at the picture tube, I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but okay, let me see if I can show you. If you look carefully at the screen, you can faintly see an edge here and here, exactly where the opening of the reflector head would have sat. So with a little bit of luck, if I leave it like it is, I can use that as a reference when I later place back the picture tube. In fact, I might even draw with an alcohol pen the contour of the opening so that I would have a sort of a reference once I place back the whole thing or reassemble the whole thing, if of course the picture tube still works. So that's it for now. I'll be back with another update once I get the whole setup ready to test the picture tube. And now the service manual says that to service the picture tube I should slide it out, and honestly I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Excuse me, because as you can see from the inside of the TV set, it's much more complicated than just disconnecting it and sliding it out. In fact, it's probably very complicated if you don't want to damage anything. So I'm not just going to unmount the picture tube just like that. I'm first going to read a little bit more and read up a little bit more on how to unmount the picture tube, because I really don't want to damage the TV set any more than that clumsy person who tried to, well, service it. Let's hope that's what he wanted to do. But in any case, yeah, I prefer to do a little more reading, and once I feel I'm ready to unmount it, then I'll film it and I'll show it to you how I unmounted the picture tube. So that's it for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed this first look at a Philco H2010 Safari portable black and white TV.